Abraham Williamson, the chairman of the Nation Without State organization, to give his speech about Tunis. Please, Mr. Graham.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to look at the West, in particular's view of Iran at the moment. Obviously, we have a nuclear deal going on at the moment, and that effectively is embracing all of the West and the UN, who are focused on that deal. Nothing else, just that deal. And there's implications. That deal was reached last year, 2015. It was driven by a fear that Iran's nuclear research would also result in a bomb, or the capability of a nuclear bomb, as apart from simply civil uses. There are allegedly 9 countries in the world with such weapons. The UN and others are concerned with nuclear proliferation. Obviously concerned that other countries may get a nuclear bomb, let alone individual non-state actors, which is the nightmare of the world. A terrorist group got hold of it. So clearly they fear countries having a nuclear weapon. Not so much that the country itself may use a nuclear weapon, but it may fall into the hands of non-state actors that may use that weapon. So in this situation, they only have 3 options. The first is just to sit by and see what happens. The second is to invade or bomb nuclear sites, as Israel did against Iraq in 1981, and ironically, as Iran did against Iraq, a nuclear facility in the Iraq-Iran war. And thirdly, of course, is to arrange a deal to help limit and control Iran's program, and that is what they've decided to do. This geopolitical decision, which is what it is, it's, it's more important to them than anything else, had little regard to Iran's internal and external politics. They didn't really look at it, didn't really care about it. Certainly, had they done so, they may indeed have been concerned about Iran's behaviour, internally and externally. Internally, Iran is an authoritarian fundamentalist regime. It routinely tortures and imprisons opponents and executes a proportion of such. It also uses its legal system to intimidate and send out messages, and to create bargaining chips by arresting dual nationals, for example. The British Iranian charity worker, Ms. Sagari Ratcliffe, has recently been prosecuted and imprisoned, I think, for 4 years. No charges, no evidence is shown. That clearly to send a message out to the diaspora not to intervene, and also a message to other countries to keep out of our politics. Although there are votes and there are elections, presidential elections in Iran, the state refuses to take a neutral stance and is determined not to lose control, and ultimately relies upon its 1979 constitution that all government powers function under the supreme leader, who is an unelected figure, and since 1989 has been Ali Khamenei. Self-determinists such as are here today, Baloch people, Awazi, Kurds, South Azerbaijanis, they are particularly vulnerable to the regime, since the Persian population, but I didn't mention Baloch, they're particularly vulnerable because the Persian population, which is regarded as the core nation of the Iranian state, is quite possibly a demographic minority. There is no attempt at devolution, federalism or accommodation to national minorities, as apart from ethnic or political ones, because they are seen to threaten the very foundations of this particular state. It's worse for Iran as for many other countries, because much of Iran is not Persian. So they fear self-determination more than democracy. They fear it more than other religious differences even. And hence why self-determinists tend to be routinely persecuted more than democratic bodies. Add therefore the fear of losing territory if the country is created within Iran, and the loss of resources, you have a recipe for oppression and worse. Externally, ever since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, some 37 years ago, relations outside have been quite poor, partly from being in a volatile region, which has led to the country being attacked itself, such as the Iraq War, or itself intervening with men or materials in Lebanon, Iraq or Yemen, and partly because its style itself as a religious guardian of a minority and somewhat beleaguered sect within the Islamic religion has meant it's been a destabilising force within the region. It regularly falls out with neighbours and wider afield, although it exercises a more considered and stable diplomacy over the last few years, which it has benefited from, which I'll explain. Given then it is made or has many enemies and has upset many others, why do we see this nuclear deal and a lifting of sanctions and indeed threats being lifted against Iran? Firstly, there is little appetite for military intervention. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya all turned out to be disasters for the West. Everywhere there's introspection and regret. It still goes on, of course, in Iraq and Syria. There's special forces, obviously aircraft is used by the West and other parts of the world. But it's more muted and disguised. It's not as clear-cut, it's not so obvious. There isn't an appetite to get involved with bombing Iran. Although, of course, it has been talked about. A few years ago, America had a list of countries it wanted to destabilise, to invade or control. Iran was one of them.
Yes.
Israel was looked at intervening in some way with Iran. In fact, after Shimon Peres' death, it's been revealed that he said that he stopped the Prime Minister of Israel attacking Iran. But things have changed, and it's the nuclear problem that has changed. Second, I'll give you an example. North Korea. North Korea has now got a nuclear weapon. It's working on its delivery system to enable it to be a genuine threat. It's aggressive. It's got a mercurial leader. You know, you never know what it's going to say next from one day to the other. It saber rattles and it's occasionally violent. If anyone was to be invaded or attacked, it would be North Korea. That would be the obvious target rather than Iran. If you're not going to do it against North Korea, you're not going to do it against something like Iran, let alone Pakistan or Israel or India. There is no known actions being taken against North Korea other than sanctions. Those sanctions don't work. Sanctions were applied to Italy in 1935 when it invaded Abyssinia. It didn't work. It was useless. Sanctions are applied against Russia. It doesn't work. Russia's not intervening because of the sanctions. And of course, sanctions are applied against North Korea. It doesn't seem to work. And beyond sanctions, you're looking at invasion and military action. And as I explained, there's no appetite from the West to get involved. Unless the West gets involved, other actors are not likely to get involved, even in my opinion, Arab countries are not likely to do it unless it's a coalition. Secondly, excuse me, the West fears Sunnite extremism rather than Shia. Given the numbers of the former, probably 80% or so of the Islamic world is Sunnite. Dispute over the actual numbers, but clearly a majority. And there's real and perceived numbers and aggression of fundamentalists in the forefront in the Shia world. And the media domination of such groups that represent that point of view, such as